Former federal prosecutor for the Eastern District of Virginia, Joseph Moreno, joins me. Good evening, Joe. And let me first start with Congresswoman Hageman. She named names. And I'm actually glad she named names, because before it's like the FBI. It's not the FBI. It's a few people who are being accused of doing the most horrific things in terms of failure to have any sort of mission of fidelity to the law, in the words of the Durham report. But I'm glad she's naming names.
Well, you're right, Greta. I mean, without naming names, there'll never be any accountability, right? And, it's interesting because the FBI, you would think we'd see some humility, some recognition that barely 48 hours ago, a horrific report came out, that's the Durham report, implicating the FBI in probably the worst political dirty trick since Watergate. And yet we have seemingly zero interest on one side of the aisle of even speaking, even hearing from these witnesses about potential allegations at the FBI. And look, the FBI is extremely powerful. If they will not tolerate any kind of good faith dissent from within their ranks, and in fact retaliate, all Americans should want to know that. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be a good governance issue that all of us should want to know and get to the bottom of.
Yeah, I guess I'm enraged on so many levels. And first of all, I think that a lot of people in the media don't take this as seriously as I do. Maybe it's because I'm a practicing lawyer and I have a higher expectation. I know at the FBI, I have a sort of a real sense they can put people in jail, they can arrest you, they can deprive you of your liberty. But I also work with FBI agents who are the most remarkable men and women, and out there in the field, and some of them get shot at, and they're trying to keep us safe. And then they have these people, or quote, the FBI, who are doing these horrendous things like what was done here and what's reported in the Durham report, and then they all sort of get a broad paintbrush. They get brought into this. So good for Hageman for naming names, and I hope they start naming names instead of just say the FBI.
Well, no, this is not a bottom-up issue. This is a top-down issue, right? And who should be held accountable here? Not the rank and file, it's leadership. And yes, it was a great first start. Am I optimistic that we're going to see much change under this administration? Not really, because the Democrats are clearly closing ranks around the Biden administration. But it's a step. It's a step in the right direction. And only if there's actual pressure by the American people will we really get to the bottom of this.
Well, I've often said this is a town of no consequences, and this might be one example. One of the members of Congress, Congresswoman from California, Sanchez, she was hammering the three FBI special agents, one's not an agent, he's a different type of employee, but hammering about their security clearances. I'm thinking to myself, I haven't heard one peep out of anybody about lifting the security clearances of those 51 former Intel officials who signed their names onto that the most disgraceful letter ever, saying that sound like Russian disinformation, the Hunter Biden laptop, when for 9 months up until that point, the FBI had it in their possession. They had to have known about it.
Well, first off, there's a real question about why former government officials still have security clearances, right? There are a few instances where that should be the case, but it should be a lot more rare than it is. And yeah, you're right, there's not going to be any consequences there. So people they'll leverage their background in the intelligence community or in law enforcement, the fact they have a clearance, they'll put their name on something like that. It's propaganda. And, will there be any kind of consequence? Absolutely not.
Well, but I mean, it's like, at what point is, and we're never going to clean this up unless there are consequences, unless heads roll.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it probably should start with the leadership at the FBI. I mean, again, the Durham report, and then you have three legitimate whistleblowers in the men that sat there before Congress this morning, and yet they were just sort of given the back of the hand by half of the Congress, and seemingly with no interest in even hearing what they had to say. Before even a single word had been spoken by the witnesses, the ranking member said this is a waste of time and money. How does that sound?
Yeah. Well, U.S. Attorney from Massachusetts, Rachel Rollins, now she's out. She is resigning. Last year, the Department of Justice opened an investigation after Rollins went to a Democratic fundraiser featuring First Lady Joe Biden. Rollins was warned this would violate the Hatch Act, but she went anyway. But that is not her only problem. The DOJ Inspector General's office 160-page report found that Rollins committed multiple violations in addition to attending the fundraiser. According to the report, Rollins used her position as a U.S. attorney to try to help a fellow Democrat in the primary election for Suffolk County District Attorney. That's the job Rollins held before President Biden appointed her to the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts. Assistant District Attorney Kevin Hayden was appointed to complete Rollins' term as Suffolk County DA when Biden appointed Rollins to be the U.S. Attorney. But Rollins wanted somebody else. She wanted Ricardo Arroyo to win the election for a full term. So Rollins gave information to the Boston Globe critical of Hayden and then planned to use that negative story to justify investigating Hayden. She then leaked to the Boston Herald that Hayden might be under federal investigation. And then, according to the report, when asked about it by investigators, Rollins lied under oath. And lastly, the report found Rollins accepted free tickets to a Boston Celtics basketball game. Rollins' lawyer said she will be submitting a resignation to President Joe Biden by the end of the week. Okay, so she accepted basketball tickets. I'm not all whooped up about that. She shouldn't. And so she went to the fundraiser with Joe Biden, First Lady. I'm not all whooped up. But the idea that she was using her office to do what she did, and she's being accused of lying under oath. That's perjury. Resign from office. If we're talking about accountability, is she going to get indicted by a grand jury?
Well, I wouldn't hold your breath about that. I mean, it's good that at least she's being driven out of office. That's something.
Not enough.
Well, and remember, her nomination was fiercely contested, and I believe it took a tie-breaking vote by the vice president to actually confirm her. So that should have been warning right there. But look, if there's one cause for optimism here, I will give some credit to the Office of the Inspector General at the Justice Department. Michael Horowitz has been in that office for over 10 years. I worked with him years ago in the private sector, and he is a true public servant. So I'm glad at least someone, whether it's this case in Massachusetts.
But everyone's sitting outside, everyone watching this show tonight is saying, what happens if I lie under oath? Am I going to get invested by a grand jury, or do I just get to resign from my job? Maybe she will get investigated by a grand jury, but that's the whole problem, is that nobody likes Washington or trusts Washington when they see that the 51, they still have their security clearances. The FBI gets to do what it wants, gets to write the law at the top, even though they're not supposed to, and all the power they have. And a U.S. attorney tries to do dirty tricks on somebody else, and now all she has to do is resign.
There's no doubt we have a crisis of confidence right now because many Americans rightfully believe there's a two-tiered system of justice, that things that you or I could never get away with.
Rightfully believe, or is there one?
Well, I mean, look, if there's cause to be suspicious, there's reason for that suspicion, right? I mean, Hillary Clinton walked away with zero consequence for numerous problems, including having classified information on personal servers. She shouldn't have had a personal server for her government use, even putting aside the classified work. Not a single consequence there. And yet then you have sort of very questionable case brought in New York City against Donald Trump by Alvin Bragg, which to call it a stretch is giving it actually a lot of credit it doesn't deserve. So there definitely seems like a very politically motivated system of justice that targets the weak or those out of power and favors those in power.
Well, no wonder the American people, many of them are quite frustrated and disappointed in Washington. Joseph Moreno, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Greta.
Coming up in 14 days, we're going to be broke. Now the Democrats have a new idea, but Republicans